last video covered Killer is Dead, a story of an assassin and his inner demons being intertwined with the past that haunted him. A slight callback to Suda51's more classic tales, which had that essence of galactic symbolism his older fans adored. Fuck that, let's bring things back down with another dirty gore fest as we take a dive into their free-to-play game known as Let It Die. But it wasn't called Let It Die at first. Right before Killer is Dead launched, Grasshopper was ready to tease their next big title known as Lily Bergamo. The art style in the trailer looks fine, I guess, but this is only a teaser, it doesn't really show anything. For years I find it silly to reach conclusions and get pre-order hungry for a reveal that doesn't even show a fragment of gameplay. Before that, there was one piece of concept art. I, like most people, made the assumption that it would be related to No More Heroes, since the person on the left looks kind of like Shinobu. Whether or not it's supposed to be her, you'll see in a bit that it doesn't matter. After that, silence for a whole year, not a shred of news. Wow, this is all sounding too familiar, isn't it? Well, get ready for another crazy coincidence. 1 year of absence later, Lily Bergamo was replaced with something that looks completely different. It's actually hard to say if this was due to publisher meddling or not, since the change happened during the period of Grasshopper merging with Gung Ho Online Entertainment, but Suda never really expressed qualms about the change or the original idea as Lily being rejected. The new face, Let It Die, would have Hideyuki Shin stepping in as director right after Killer is Dead.
Prototyping Lily Bergamo, a lot of things had to be changed around. It eventually just became Let It Die. People were surprised looking at a female protagonist with a strong story become this survival action kind of a game. But from the very beginning, when Grasshopper joined the Gung Ho group, it was already decided that they were going to make a free-to-play action game.
Originally, we wanted to make a hack and slash, so the concept for that is still the same as Let It Die. As we tried to think of good gameplay, we had this side mode for Lily Bergamo, which was really interesting, so we decided to expand that idea, and that turned into Let It Die. And when we kept expanding that idea, the world of Lily Bergamo needed to change.
I'd venture to guess this was a change Suda went towards himself with his crew, but I bet it doesn't take much to imagine folks getting miffed over this sharp turn in style for the next big Grasshopper game. People were disappointed with the drastic change in its artistry and atmosphere. I personally did not mind. I don't have anything against art styles like Lily Bergamo, but I also have no real attachment to it either. Very few games that look like this keep my attention for very long. Those kinds of games have their purpose and audience, I'm sure. Yeah, enjoy your Atelier Miruru. Ugh. I just don't think the overtly anime aesthetic works for what Suda makes. Obviously, there's fragments of it in his games as well as inspirations, but I just can't see him making something that looks like the fragment of Lily Bergamo that they showed. It's why I'd never really want a No More Heroes anime series or anything like that. I can't imagine it actually looking good or meld with the themes from the games. You wonder why it took me so long to play Ranko Tsukigime's Longest Day? That's right, because I couldn't find a copy at a reasonable price for ages. I'll admit though, it didn't appear Let It Die had too much of that personality I expect from Grasshopper either. Too dark and grimy, nothing really stood out too much, save for a couple of the weapons and that adorable skateboarding Reaper. Lily Bergamo provided a more clear artistic aspect. Well, more in its still art rather than the trailer. But if I really wanted to be snooty with my argument, the reveal trailer for Let It Die showed the actual game, and not just what I assume is CG that's not even in-engine.
After Lily Bergamo became Let It Die, we could focus more on the action survival aspects, but the technical side wasn't lost.
It sounds like at least a percentage of the original idea remained in the core gameplay at the very least, so put those body pillows away because we're going to be talking about the kooky Uncle Death and his arcade machine. Now, to be frank, there isn't a whole lot to discuss regarding this game. There's more of a setting rather than a story. With that in mind, I give a somewhat greater focus on the gameplay and design aspects, which I feel there's more to talk about. And I'm going into this with over 2 years of experience. I've been playing since its launch back in December 3rd of 2016 and have logged in nearly every single day since. So I think I know a thing or two about the goddamn mountain of grinding this game has. With that, might as well dive into the gameplay. The prologue gives you a pretty good idea of what you're in for. You are brought into this world to fight. Gather up what you can find, climb the Tower of Barbs to claim yourself the ultimate fighting champion. With the help of Uncle Death, Commodore Suzuki, and the Mushroom Magistrate, you need to grind your way to the top. For this view. And let me tell you gotta grind. A lot. The game starts out innocently enough, beat up some slow enemies and bots that are of the same build as you. The online factor of the game is set as you encounter a hater, which is another player's character. While it isn't another human player you're up against, this hater has the same loadout the human owner was using. There's always one hater in each floor, and killing them grants you extra goodies. The game is designed around having much of it procedurally generated. Not all rooms change, but most do, as well as enemy placement and material locations. You can never really map out the floor until you've gone through and laid it out yourself, and as soon as you leave that floor, it will most likely be a whole different array of patterns on your revisit. Facing an enemy one-on-one is usually not so bad. Typically you can read their incoming attacks and go for the kill when you see an opening. The AI is not too bright. It's when you got multiple fools on your ass that can be a problem, especially when they're at equal strength, if not higher, and you're running low on weapons or your durability bars are near their end. Sock, smash, shoot, and slice your way through the floors. Level up your characters to their max. Throw them away once you get better ranked ones. Level up those new ones and beat more floors. Now throw them away for even better ranked ones. That's the case for everything in this game. Your weapons, make better ones. Your gear, make better ones. Your characters, make better ones. There's other perks to be had too, such as decals you get through the Magistrate.
Oh, how I've been waiting for you, fellow believer in the power of the mushroom.
Seriously, if the majority of your kill coins aren't going to her for premium decals, you're not playing this game right. Rinse and repeat all of this until you've reached the 40th floor to take on the biggest baddie of the campaign and achieve ultimate greatness. Just so you can grind your way through post-game add-on floors that are even more difficult. Fuck! That's pretty much all there is to the core gameplay. It might seem overwhelming when you're getting started, especially with the heaps and heaps of descriptions this game throws at you the first half hour, but it is pretty simple. Fight your way through the floors, gather up the right kinds of materials, splithium, coins, apply buffs on your characters, and make better weapons, which will ultimately help you out more than the ones you managed to scrounge from dead bots. Contribute to Team Deathmatch battle events, send out your extra hunters to excavate as much as you can, understand spacing in the combat, learn enemy patterns, look for openings, make sure you're properly dressed for the occasion, and you'll be chewing through the haters, the screamers, the bosses, and the dumb frogs! Insert comparison to the Souls game here. Haha, send tweet. Don't get me wrong though, the second half of the game certainly feels like it has more brick walls when it comes to making progress. The enemies get especially tough once you're past floor 20, and sometimes Lady Luck is not with you when you're just trying to find an elevator back down. I remember having to dart my way through 4 floors just to get back to my home base because I basically had no equipment left. So let's talk about the story. What's that? You say there's no story at all? I'll show you no story. While the only real cinematics are sparse, there's plenty to take from this odd setting. A lot of it is just tucked away in a different room. The Earth has experienced a massive shift of tectonic plates, causing humanity to fall into complete turmoil. Among this immense tectonic shift, from the very center of the world, which I guess is Tokyo, a seemingly endless tower rose through the sky. The Tower of Barbs would become a combination of different societies and civilizations, but nobody knows what is actually at the top. Or if there is a top. Rumor has it that the top of this tower has the key to a new future for the human race. Others say ultimate divinity, or God. Who will reach the top of this tower? You! Yeah, you. Come on, get to climbing! We'll talk more about the game's ending and how I took in the story later. As for experiencing the game, what did I think? It's great. Surprisingly great for what it is. I was really concerned over the game once they said it was free to play, but there is so much more to it than I initially expected. The combat is nothing breathtaking, but still really satisfying once you get into it. The over-the-top violence and buckets of blood everywhere are considerably goofy, but their focus on ultra-violence makes for some really fun executions. The music is simply fantastic. I couldn't believe there were so many songs packed into the game, and the variety was very impressive. I think it helps that an update allowed the soundtrack to play through the Tower of Barbs and not just your home base. Although, something I noticed is that all the songs are called Let It Die.
All of the songs in the game are titled Let It Die. The artists had complete creative control as long as it had to do with the title Let It Die. Whatever they felt Let It Die meant, is what they used.
According to Shin in the same interview, this was all managed by Akira Yamaoka. Of course, he, of all people, found a way to have a unique take on creating a game's soundtrack. While it's typical for game developers to receive musical assistance from one or a handful of artists, the band count for this game is incredible, and to give them complete creative freedom at that is especially great. So, something that's certainly a challenge when creating a free-to-play game, making it a worthwhile experience that doesn't keep begging you for money. There's negative imputation towards any game that's free-to-play, especially games around this time where it was free because the game itself was cheaply made with little to no content. 95% of the content is gated off by a set price. I guess these are basically considered demos. They let you play all you want in the beginning, but the only way to progress was to cough up some dough or lock up all the especially good equipment behind packages you can only pay real money for. Oh, and the billions of free-to-play games that basically encourage gambling for virtual shit. There's various examples of these in both previous and current generation. I think multiplayer free-to-play games have gotten a better idea of how to provide a free game that's serviceable on its own, and the only things you can get with real money are cosmetics that don't affect your in-game performance. Say what you want about Fortnite, but I can at least respect that there's no sort of advantage against other players you can get through a credit card. Just chicken heads to make your character look stupider. Okay, I hope that's the last time I ever have to mention Fortnite in any of my videos. Back to Let It Die, which is a single-player experience. This is where it goes for a more interesting approach with its free-to-play design. For the creators knew what the general consensus was when it came to your typical free-to-play titles and wanted to make sure it stood out from the other examples of bad free-to-play games.
In regards to the free-to-play aspect, once we decided that we would go with that model, we said that we wouldn't have any elements that would be pay to win. That's a huge turnoff for a lot of players, especially in the West. We decided that the three main points for monetization would be continuing, cutting the time necessary to craft, and the VIP Express Pass, which does not give you an extreme advantage because you're not paying money to get stronger, you're just making traveling and inventory more efficient.
So let's discuss the most noticeable paying aspect. In Let It Die, you have these death medals. The game sometimes gives them away through daily logins or streaming specials, but the quickest way to get them is through the PSN or Steam store. These are continues that you can use whenever you happen to perish while climbing the tower. Yeah, I know what you're thinking, but just hear me out for a second. Let's assume they never put those death medals on sale. Once a month, 10 for only $1. Regular price for a single one, as you can see here, is 50 cents, half a buck per continue. While arcades that use quarters are a relic of the past, for the most part, the only arcade near me when I was growing up was fairly high-end. They made sure they got the latest and greatest. As soon as the US distributors got Time Crisis 4, F-Zero AX, Tekken 5 Dark Resurrection, this place got them too. Sometimes they'd opt for a Japanese cabinet if it meant receiving it much sooner. But the lowest cost for any game in there? 50 cents. Even your more humble machines like Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was 50 cents for just one credit. Never mind certain games costing you $1.25. From various people I've spoken to, 50 cents was considerably the norm, although there did exist lower-end arcades that stuck to a single quarter for one credit. This is the problem I have with people trying to use Let It Die as an example of pay-to-win bullshit. Are you prepared to say that about some of the greatest arcade games of our time? Sure, you can cheese through House of the Dead with a fat roll of quarters, but that isn't the point of the game. True gratification came from learning and managing to get through the entire campaign without using a single continue. I always saw any arcade game with a simple beginning and end as this trial you had to learn. Continues are more for when you want to practice that scenario and know better for next time. Keep sharpening your skills and you can beat the game with a single credit. If we're to really pinpoint how Let It Die is designed as coin-op classics, it calls back to a very rare practice used in the arcade scene, outside of fighting games. Ever play Narc? Amazing little 80s action game where you're a cop in motorcycle gear fucking murdering everybody. It was great. Anyway, the game's epilogue is you fighting this abomination of a head machine thing, I'm not sure. But the point is, this is the final boss. And if you run out of lives during this fight, put in another credit and continue, you get sent back to the beginning of said fight. That's right, you can't cheese your way through this. If you're not learning the pattern and don't try to understand his weaknesses, you can't finish the game. You need to adapt. The Grid is another example, a severely underrated third-person arena shooter. Single player is set up like a tower of trials. If you fail any of them and choose to continue, you restart that trial and have to do better in order to keep making progress. And here you can think of literally any fighting game that was made for arcades. Those are all fine examples as well. Can't beat your opponent? Tough shit. Get better because they're at full health if you choose to continue. Let It Die isn't exactly the same, but it's something that realistically can't be pay to win when you're ill-prepared, which is almost always the case when you die. If that boss killed you within seconds, it's because you're not ready for them. There are times where you'll be in an area you really shouldn't due to your level or equipment, or a boss battle that's far too powerful for you to take on. It doesn't matter if you have 10 death medals or 100. If you're not strong enough, you aren't going to win. And some bosses can be a real pain when you don't understand them. Nothing that can't be overcome by learning their patterns and getting the hang of their habits, of course. I always felt that a good boss in video games either have heavy sound cues for devastating attacks, or fairly long animation startups for them, if not both. With that said, Let It Die's bosses give you harsh lessons from time to time that you need to keep your eye on them and respect their space. Also, react when necessary, as their patterns and reads are noticed from their visuals rather than the sounds they make. If one of these big brutes clobber you, usually the best option is to let your character perish and use another to either rescue them or salvage using kill coins from your home base. This game isn't designed for you to pay your way to the top, especially considering what you're able to get through real money. Sometimes there's decent blueprints and such to be had, like when they do specials or game crossovers, but nothing they offer is going to help you actually progress through the game at the snap of your fingers. There's no amount you can pay that'll nullify the major grindfest this game is. And when it comes to continues, most of the time it's better to just deny the option and start back from your home base, especially if you know how to upgrade and maintain it, as well as save your goodies and don't go spending coins all willy-nilly. Just take what you need for that moment. This game isn't designed for you to whore out continues just to beat a boss. It's like the damn title itself, Let It Die. Let your character die and realize what is the best way to improve yourself and do better next time. Not to say continuing is always a bad option, sometimes you messed up or you're just ever so close to defeating that boss. The VIP Express Pass, as mentioned before, also only increases your inventory and grants you use of the Express Elevator, which does not cost kill coins. Like Shin said, the Express Pass just grants some convenience. It doesn't make your character stronger in any way, shape, or form.
We know there are a lot of negative stigmas in regards to free-to-play games on console, but we here at Grasshopper, along with Gonko, feel like we have put so much work into this game. With the amount of both quality and content that we have put into Let It Die, we feel like there is a lot more here than you would find in some games that are on store shelf, but it's all for free. I feel confident in saying that if you put a few hours into the game, you will understand what it is we are going for with Let It Die, and you'll find that you're enjoying it quite a lot.
I understand people being apprehensive about the game at first, thinking it'll just try to hold you down and take your lunch money an hour in, but it doesn't. It respects you as someone looking for an interesting experience, but willing to make some things more convenient if you wish to receive that assistance. However, it pulls no punches once you're getting closer to the top. Let It Die was in a wave of free-to-play games providing a better face for this structure. Whether or not it nailed that balance, I don't think it receives enough credit for trying to be creative with its content rather than greedy. You have to put in your time for Let It Die, not your money. What, you think there's pay-to-win shit? This beam katana? Yeah, I had to pay 20 death medals for it, but it ain't worth shit if I don't upgrade it like 30 times. Look at this grocery list of material. I earned this.
When creating Let It Die, I really wanted to look at it from the user's point of view. I know from playing free-to-play games myself that a lot of times the monetization options are way too in your face, and I really don't like that. Business-wise, maybe we should have placed more monetization opportunities in Let It Die, but I know that as a player myself, I wouldn't enjoy that. We didn't want to push that in anyone's faces with our game. If you do want to monetize, then it's purely for your convenience. If the game for some reason doesn't do well in terms of money, but we do end up having a large base of gamers who are enjoying the game without monetizing, then for me as a game creator, I can live with that. To me, people playing and enjoying a game that I have created, what more can I ask for?
So, one more thing to go over. The way Let It Die shares its themes with the other mainline Grasshopper titles: individualism, society, and death. Regarding individualism, it's expressed most blatantly through how expendable your roster is. After all, you're not going to clear the Tower of Barbs on your own, you need to populate that freezer of yours. It's also inferred that the Death Drive console itself is designed to create clones, making your character superfluous, or not have any real importance. An army of climbers for this tower, and most of them will never manage to reach the top. Play this game for a bit, then quit before you can dominate the 40th floor? Well, you could say that expresses the individuality of the game's roster even more, which many already have. I'd like to discuss the ending, but if I've convinced you to give this game a try, I suggest waiting until you get there yourself. It's just more satisfying and perplexing that way. Here's the timestamp if you want to skip this discussion and finish the rest of the video. There's a link in the description with this timestamp as well. If you don't think it's that important to earn the ending yourself, that's your choice. So without further ado, let's continue. Something to discuss is the relationship this game shares with the Tower of Babel, the most obvious inspiration for the Tower of Barbs. A biblical tale about man working together in unity, building a tower in complete cooperation seeking paradise. During construction, God caused the people to speak different languages, ruining the cooperation they all had while building, and undoing the progress of this tower, leaving it to ruination. With God's action birthed a new wave of civilization, splitting up the community around the Tower of Babel to various countries around the world, creating multiple societies through the new environment and exclusive languages. And racism, I guess. As divine action caused the destruction of the Tower of Babel and began a new chapter for humanity's history, the Tower of Barbs, also created by unforeseen divine action, could possibly mean the end of this chapter. When it comes to stories of God, there's always this underlying fear, and Tower of Babel is no different. Who knows how it would have turned out if the folks of this land actually did reach him while building the tower. Throughout the Old Testament, God is known to be wrathful and perform acts of smite. Seeing as how Let It Die takes clear inspiration from a well-known tale about God ruining this community that was high on their own hubris, it's hard to think the story in this game won't end in some sort of ruination. Which it almost did. The game reveals that your creation was sponsored by Yotsuyama Enterprises, and Uncle Death himself is the owner of this company. He had a plan to use the strongest souls in the world to wipe out all of humanity with the stored power in the moon. Seemingly because he hates how people have treated the earth and thinks it's time to clean house. Which is something God has done before with the flood.
Humans do nothing but corrupt and destroy the earth. Even with the land split into 4 pieces, they cannot control their greed and continue to fight and kill each other. The time has come for them to pay for their sins by the hand of hell's greatest punishment. So that's it. Game over. It was fun though, senpai. Well, that was the plan anyway. But you know what? I'm done with all this. Senpai, the thing is, I've really come to respect you.
It's a miracle that you've managed to make it this far! Plus, the way you fought to get here! You're a world-class fighter! You can do anything! I really just want to see more of your amazing performance!
As the ending was reaching its peak, where you were about to face the biggest threat in this game,
so this is supposed to be where the last boss fight starts, but I'm done with all that now.
Uncle Death decides to scrap literally his entire plan.
Check this out instead! It's the Death Drive Triple X! Have you heard about it? It just came out today! Come on, let's play!
Your performance turned him around, so he decided it was more important to just have fun. A great subversion. This ending that started as this grand scheme you were being played into, a fairly popular trope in storytelling, took a sharp turn immediately towards something that's both unremarkable and bewildering. In a way, the writers were able to make an unspecial ending special, if that makes sense. I don't know, is it too late to compliment this betrayal of expectations? Everyone seems to hate the idea of it now. Something to add to the individualism of your characters. It's crazy to think they'd even have a backstory for obvious reasons. That's how unimportant you are, since it appears you are nothing more than a husk sent out to climb the Tower of Barbs. But you know who does have a backstory? The villains. Of course, you gotta go out and find them. There's an aspect to society when looking at how the communities are established in Let It Die's online capabilities. grudge matches between states or entire countries, picking factions, and even the occasional kidnapping. When you deeply dive into the Tokyo Death Metro, you start to get very defensive on your home base and the faction you're a part of, since the game does its best to pit them against each other, and the more coins and slithium you have stored in your inventory, the bigger you're making yourself a target. Besides that, the tower itself is split up between different kinds of communities: the underground industrial area full of haphazardly modded equipment, the dystopian city riddled with militarized screamers, the carnival town loaded with weapons and items that hark back to ye olde era, as well as religious objects, and lastly, the top of the skyscrapers that emphasize on sporting events with its weaponry and venues. All of these shaped and formed by their leaders. They're not products of their society, they are the creators of these new vicious societies and drone-like killers, which you don't really get until you find their backstories. For death? Come on, do you need me to spell it out for you? Let it die! Killing the haters, dying constantly as you attempt to make progress, disposing of your fighters when they run out of use. Hell, the Grim Reaper himself is your buddy and tour guide throughout the Tower of Barbs, who depended on your ability to kill your adversaries in order to put forth this plan to destroy all of humanity. You know, before he decided he doesn't feel like it. I initially had my doubts about Let It Die since I went through so many bad free-to-play games back then. It's hard to say if this title would have benefited from being a standard $60 purchase and designed as such, especially considering the game on its own has a pretty big world to explore within the Tower of Barbs. The amount of content in Let It Die was very surprising, but I have to say, I definitely spent way less than $60 for my experience these past 2 years, on 2 different platforms to boot, and I got a lot out of this game. Sure, the grinding aspect can be very disengaging, but the payoff that comes from leveling up your best equipment to tear through the higher floors makes it feel more worthwhile. I do understand, however, that it's a rather tall order from the more casual players. Either you invest a lot of time into the game, or you don't. If you're playing Let It Die or are interested in starting, join my Discord and feel free to ask me anything about it. I have most of the game and its mechanics memorized pretty well at this point, and I'm happy to help anyone who's lost or stuck. Link to my Discord server down below.
Travis, hello?
You can't explore the Tower of Barbs without sporting some fashion. The DIY attack ensemble, assault force gear, evil wizard getup, hard puncher outfit. But what about the NYC Sukuban casual wear? I bet your clones could easily slay the haters with this full getup, throw on that Nakanai dad hat, dragon tattoo shirt, and... oh, they don't sell pants. Fuck! So, we've reached a significant point at Grasshopper's timeline. This little video series I started releasing, oh my god, about a year ago, has finally covered more than a decade's worth of Suda51 and his journey towards finding success in the West. While I always enjoyed the company's mainline titles, I never really attempted to analyze the games until I started writing for these videos. Even some of their most shallow entries prove to have interesting parts that I think are criminally underlooked by both detractors and fans. Not to act like I'm on some ivory tower, because I'm not really sure if I'm even right with my attempts to analyze Suda's games. But a lot of people from both demographics don't appear to attempt seeking depth in his company's efforts that help make their tales unique. Instead, people try pinning what his efforts are about with single words or short phrases, and just leave it at that. Whether they only see the company's games as purely ultra-violence, eroticism, or just plain old wackiness, I don't think it's possible to see all of his endeavors under a single one of these umbrellas. However, he admits this was something the company was falling into due to their own timeline.
I don't think Grasshopper games necessarily needed to be violent. It makes sense with Let It Die's setting and the environment, but for our next game, who knows? It really depends on what it is. We don't necessarily feel married to violence. We always want to be fresh with what we create. We're not necessarily married to either our older kind of games or what we're currently known for. The next direction I want to take is a completely new challenge.
This is why I raise my eyebrow whenever someone tries to pin Suda's games down with things like a crazy story that makes no gosh darn sense, or sexy scandalous ladies, or over-the-top blood spatter and gore. I feel like these are the kind of people that set themselves up for disappointment as soon as he tries to do something that's not like Killer 7, not like Lollipop Chainsaw, or not like No More Heroes, because he most likely won't. And anyone that thinks just because his games tend to be rated M means that ultraviolence or eroticism are part of his signature are only looking at the surface level without trying to appreciate what else he brings in those games.
I believe violence or death needs some explanation or reasoning behind it. I always try to talk about the people who are close to death, like assassins or other killers. I always question why each character wants to fight, or why each character should be killed. As far as sexuality is concerned, I'm not that interested. I'm aware that I use a lot of it, but I actually want to create something different. As long as sexuality has some core meaning to whatever is expressed, that's fine. If it doesn't have a lot of reason, it's not really necessary. I'm not talking about the industry in general, of course, but it's just my opinion.
I mean, the ultra-violence and sexuality was how I looked at his work when I was younger, but I can see now that he wanted his games to be so much more. That includes the ones that he couldn't be more involved in.
In Japan, they call my games Suda games. That means something to a lot of people. I still handled the creative side of things as well as overall executive producing when I wasn't able to realistically put myself into the team as a director.
This is why I tried to find congruent themes between all of his mainline Western titles, seeing as how his mindset and development changed when he started making Killer 7, his first game for a Western audience. I've been very upfront and blunt about what I like and dislike from his games. I think every single one of his mainline titles are great pieces of video game history, warts and all. They each have a unique story to tell and an interesting take on design, even with their flaws, possibly stemming from the fact that Suda is more interested in providing a unique narrative than ultra-tight gameplay of the respective genre. That's what I like seeing in Suda51 and his work. His company never fails to deliver an interesting experience for me. He always ensures that his essence is present in the games he associates himself with, even the ones that don't have him at the highest position of game development.
The games that get associated with me are rightfully associated with me. I might not have directed them, but Shadows of the Damned, Lollipop Chainsaw, and Killer is Dead are all titles that I specifically came up with a concept for, so in a way, they are my games.
Something I can always rely on him to do as well is to be unique with everything he does. At this point, I've decided to put my trust in him and his company. Some might try to call that brand loyalty, but that's a really ugly way to put it because Grasshopper Manufacture is more than a name to me. It's a part of someone's soul that does its best to be creative. As Suda tries to bleed that soul onto everyone involved in his company, that means the people involved follow suit with pursuing freshness in every single step. Most of the time.
I personally would like to thoroughly demolish the existing Grasshopper traits one by one, and by demolishing them, I'd like to propose new ideas and create new ways to play.
They're not the only company that approaches game development in this sense, of course, but I do feel like Grasshopper Manufacture tries harder than most to take their game development in new directions every single time, supported by Suda51. Even if you say this game is his best or that game is his worst, I think it's more important to see that every single title has a fragment of his soul within it. Even with the publishers trying to screw him over time and time again, Suda and his gang will still do their best to stay true to their roots and what they believe, and this caused him to take his company back in a matter of sorts shortly after the launch of Let It Die. But this isn't the time to talk about that. Please, join me next time when we take a deep look into the Nintendo Switch exclusive installment known as Travis Strikes Again, No More Heroes. Thanks for watching. As usual, I give appreciation to Sukuban NYC for sponsoring me. If they can make a dumpy ape like me look cool, imagine how good they'd be on you. Check out their awesome clothing through the link below. Big thanks to Chaseface for once again providing his voice for the video. Check out his channel. I'd also like to thank Poncho for also providing his voice. He sings songs, talks about stuff in Spanish. Ay, no puedo creer. Pero echa un vistazo al canal de Pancho a través del siguiente enlace. And last but certainly not least, thank you to my patrons. You really help me improve myself and hope I continue to earn your support. And if you are not a patron yet and would like to become one, check out my page below and see what neat little rewards you can get, including early previews to upcoming videos.